President Obama, our country is in dire straits because the foreign oil interests are holding the American economy hostage by controlling the availability and prices of oil. This past summer, while you were campaigning for the presidency, gas prices skyrocketed to over $4 a gallon. Since that time, the trickle-down effect of exorbitant gas prices has touched every aspect of the American people and the economy. With the ultimate goal of becoming more of an energy-independent country, various steps must be taken to protect our future. I have taken the liberty to explore the issues surrounding offshore drilling, because everyone seems to agree that gas prices are out of our control and that we must come up with an alternative to foreign oil supply as our main source of energy. This issue must be one of your top priorities. Please consider the following.
So the idea that the United States can somehow, as Thomas Friedman, the New York Times columnist, has put it, build a wall of energy independence around itself is ludicrous on its face. And yet we hear this over and over from the right, from the left, from the neoconservatives, from the environmentalists. Oh, the United States should divorce ourselves from the rest of the world.
As you know, American energy independence is an essential aspect of the United States energy policy. With the United States consuming an average of 20.7 million barrels of oil per day and producing only 8.3 million barrels each day, many believe that we must make changes to become less dependent on foreign oil sources by producing more domestically.
If we become independent of oil as a fuel source or as an energy source, period, that's going to accomplish the goal of making sure we're not dependent on Saudi Arabia or Nigeria or Venezuela. As long as we use oil to the extent that we do, we will always be immersed in conflicts around the world to make sure that that supply doesn't get cut off.
As a country, we have our own resources to provide oil that we need. Certainly it's not going to be enough, but should there be should there be an interruption in the supply of foreign oil, better that we have our own domestic resources to be able to provide at least much of the oil that we need.
I must stress that our findings make it clear that despite the free fall in oil prices in recent months, the era of low energy prices is over.
Any type of oil extraction executed domestically has a potential negative effect on the environment. Oil spills, pollution, and destruction of the marine ecosystem are all likely consequences that stem from offshore drilling. Has technology improved to the point where we have control of the possible destructive outcomes of drilling in our national waters?
Specifically, if you were to drill on the east, in the eastern Gulf of Florida, on the West Florida shelf, it's a different type of bottom on the eastern portion of the Gulf of Mexico than there is, say, in Louisiana or off the coast of Texas. And I think the bottom, it's a carbonate bottom, and I think it's more sensitive than other areas of the Gulf. And so when it comes to fish habitat and things like that, concerned about those ecological costs.
When you look at just the production of bringing the oil out of the ground, that is a highly regulated activity with constant supervision, and something that there's a lot of science and care that goes into preventing the release of oil into the environment. And if we thought that even one drop of oil would land on a beach because of increased offshore oil production, we would be against it. But when we look at it, 30 miles offshore, out of sight, we do not see a risk to the beaches from production of oil.
At the end of the day, you're talking about a very dirty fuel source in terms of oil. You're talking about a very industrial process with all sorts of pieces to that industrial process. Exploring for the oil, drilling for the oil, moving the oil, processing the oil. You're talking about an industry that, of their own admission and the permits they have to get from different agencies, federal agencies, acknowledges that there's a tremendous amount of point source pollution from the rigs directly into the water around the rigs. So at the end of the day, there's almost no way I can imagine a scenario where you could take a large industrial facility, put it in the Gulf of Mexico, drill for something like oil, and not have either the possibility of routine pollution or some sort of human error or mechanical error that would lead to pollution secondary to that routine pollution that just happens on a day-to-day basis.
Despite the promise of every political leader in the last 40 years, this country has grown more dependent on foreign energy supplies. A reliable source of energy is essential to the economy and national security because without it, we are vulnerable to the political whims of foreign suppliers. If offshore drilling is not a viable alternative to our current energy necessities, then other options need to be more thoroughly explored immediately.
Why does this idea of energy independence have so much traction today in American politics? And I think that there are 4 reasons. Those 4 reasons: the second Iraq War, global warming, peak oil, and terrorism.
Urgent because it was over $4 a gallon, and so when prices jump that high, that's a major shock to a lot of people's pocketbook, and they'd like something done. And there are proponents out there that would like proponents of drilling that would make money off of having easier access to some of these reserves, and so they viewed it as an opportunity. Hey, why don't we do something about this problem? And so it became a political issue, driven by public concern over $4 a gallon gas prices. But I don't think it's going to go away because I do think the proponents of drilling in the next Congress are going to want to see some access to reserves on a continental shelf in the next energy bill.
Our country needs to come to grips with its energy production needs and become creative and embrace these new technologies and embrace technologies that diversify us away from oil and remove some of our dependence on offshore oil.
America needs energy independence. The petro-dictators will never own American wind and sunshine, and we should never again be beholden to their barrels of crude.
We are looking for President Obama to do what previous presidents have failed to do, and that is to develop the green energy infrastructure and the green energy jobs of the future that aren't dependent on fossil fuels, and that negate even the argument as well as the need for anyone talking about drilling in the eastern Gulf of Mexico.
The reason that I think it is dangerous to continue on this track of this discussion is that this idea of energy independence, one, it is degrading the political rhetoric in America. If we cannot have an open and honest discussion about energy, the single most important commodity in the global economy, what can we have an open and honest discussion about?